Dark energy. In the future, the universe will render the I just messed up that opening, but that's okay. You're listening to Exofathom, and I'm gonna give you a quote. The quote is, "The universe will render itself so large at some point, having accelerated so significantly that all the galaxies of the night sky will have accelerated beyond our horizon. And all the galaxies are the source of our knowledge of cosmology, of the Big Bang. Everything we know about the history of the universe comes to us from these galaxies. If they accelerate beyond our horizon, the next generation of cosmic explorers will only have the stars of the Milky Way to think about. And so there would have been an entire chapter of the universe ripped from their view, and they will be trying to contemplate as understanding of the universe without a significant part of what its past was. And so I lose sleep wondering today, was there some previous chapter ripped from the universe itself? And here we are, touching the elephant, so to speak, not knowing that in fact there's an elephant standing there, or maybe there is a shadow of an elephant and the elephant has been moved. We just don't know."
The program you are about to hear is fiction, science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction.
Welcome to Exofathom. I'm Ayla, and tonight I'll be your host. That quote you just heard me butcher is from an interview of Neil deGrasse Tyson. And I thought it was a fun primer for tonight's conversation on remote sensing and the myth of Sisyphus. But first, let me introduce my two lovely co hosts. Like, they are really just so lovely. Nick and Mike, how are you?
Hey. Happy Friday. I'm good. How are you?
Good. I didn't have time to proofread my notes tonight, so lots of grammar mistakes. So apologies for that hard opening, but I'm hanging in there.
That's
Like
why I
I'm.
keep my cold open to haikus.
Oh yeah, like short little.
Mm-hmm.
Don't listen to Nick. That was a kick saving a beauty. You did great. Don't worry.
Oh, thank you.
10
Well,
out
it's
of
one of my
10.
old performer days, right? If you fall,
No.
just the show must go on.
I used to play French horn in orchestra, and as many notes that I missed, I'm lucky that I picked French horn and not something like trumpet. Because oh dear God, I would stop and then mimic like I was playing something, and then okay, that's the note that we're on. All right, and then start playing again.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I forgot how much punctuation matters when you're trying to like speak in a way that denotes breaks in thought. So anyway, Mike, how are you doing tonight? Happy Friday.
Well, since you stole my line, I don't know what to say.
That was on purpose, forcing you to
Yeah, I
think out of the
know,
box.
right? I think different. All things being considered, I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah. Well, I like your shades.
Oh, thank you. I don't know where I got them. They just popped up somewhere in my house one day.
I love it.
But yeah, I like them too. They work with the Deadpool beanie.
Oh, I'd love it. Yeah. And your house eats things.
Oh yeah.
Never.
Twilight Zone up in there. It's like that place under the bed where you lose socks, or like the washing machine where you lose socks. That's my whole house.
It just exists in this quantum realm.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I'm doing well, and it's good that you're hanging in there.
Oh, thank you. Well, all right. So before we get started for tonight's show, I just wanted to ask if either of you are familiar with the term remote sensing. You know what that is?
Is that like remote viewing?
I thought it was close. I actually heard somebody mention it, like a well-respected professional, and I thought, that's odd, like remote viewing, but like remote. So I Googled it, and then it opened this like little Pandora's box of cool stuff.
Yeah, one might say that phone calls are remote viewing. You get to tap into that other person and get to listen to them, a little insight on their life,
Yeah, you experience their personhood.
yeah, get a observation of what they're going through at the time, even if it's just through audio uh, cues.
Right. Nick, how about you?
No, honestly, I had not heard of this. Although I guess if you put those two words together, they make sense enough, right?
Yeah.
Oh wait,
Yeah.
wait, is this like when you're sensing the remote around you and you lost
Mhm.
it? That's what
Yeah,
we're talking
it's
about.
in between the couch cushion.
It's always between the couch cushion.
Mhm.
It's always the last place you look, right? Because if you keep looking after you find it, why you keep looking?
It's true.
Hmm.
Put a
That's
little bell on that thing.
yeah.
Um,
That I mean, yeah, why does that phrase even exist? That's just obvious. Huh. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for
There
that.
you go.
Well, for those of you listening, remote sensing is sort of related to like geophysical remote sensing. And archaeological remote sensing is a technology that lets archaeologists remotely study the remains of past cultures without actually physically contacting them where they are. It's sort of like aerial photography, satellite imagery, and there's a whole bunch of other geophysical techniques that can sort of use their scans to, like detect changes in dirt from like disturbed dirt to non-disturbed dirt. Or you can find like ancient civilizations in Peru are being discovered through this remote sensing technology. So having shared some of that, have you guys heard any stories recently? Because I know I think I heard about this a little bit in the Graham Hancock documentary
Mhm.
series on Netflix.
Yeah, they use what they call LiDAR in order to sort of like do deep um, radar screening underground. And I think they were talking about how they're starting to see large structures in the Amazon that have been overgrown by the forest. They don't know if it's a civilization, but it's something. It's significant enough for them to be interested in it. That's for sure.
It's the aliens, man.
It's
No.
the aliens.
It's always the aliens. 110% always. They're here among us.
Among Us.
Um, there's an ancient Chinese war strategy, I think, that kind of reminds me of the stuff that we're talking about, where you would have someone put their like ear to the ground and try to sense vibrations of a moving army that was coming close.
Mhm.
And sometimes they
that's
would
smart.
put drummers, they put war drummers under the ground to sense the sound because I think this is where I get a little shaky in my memory, where like they can sense the sound a lot more. So they pound the war drums, and then that relays the sound back to the people with their ears to the ground, and
Dude, I love that.
they would let their army know that this army is coming. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, a little bit. It's kind of using like bouncing waves off of things in order to sort of I don't know. You know what I'm thinking of right now as you were talking? I was thinking of Batman with the Heath Ledger Joker. And I think that's where they unveil the baddie technology. What is it? Radar? Sonar.
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 Mhm.
And I mean, it's sort of like that, you're sort of bouncing these things and then you're getting these images, and it's really phenomenal stuff. I was
Terrifying.
reading
If
terrifying.
you're using cell phones to create that sort of environment like lidar does, yeah, a little terrifying in my point of view.
Oh, right. Well, as many things, you can definitely wield it for the dark arts. You can go, go the Slytherin route, or be a little
Hey,
bit more
hey,
charitable.
not all not all Slytherin, okay?
Okay, fair enough. But it was interesting because I was thinking I saw two other articles this week, and I wasn't sure if I was going to build an episode around them. But there was some recent ocean floor analysis. So this is getting off of archaeology for a moment, but there is ocean floor analysis that discovered like a whole new mountain underwater. It was in the Miami Herald, and the location, they call it an it's round, and startlingly round sorry, I'm getting popped with bats on this article. Okay. So it's off of California, and it's just a circular dot that shows up. And you can't really see the image unless you're reading the article I'm reading. Nick, I should have sent you a link. But basically, it was just never discovered before. And it's about 3,000 feet off the seafloor. So it's really steep and it's got smooth sides. And it was detected with this technology that we didn't really implement in this way before. There is also a new study that came out where they discovered a new internal core of the Earth, again, by sort of shooting these like satellite waves into the middle of the Earth and then seeing what bounces back. I mean, guys, we discovered a new internal piece of our Earth's core that we never knew before. And then
I'm pretty sure that's how my hot pockets get made. They shoot some waves or something to the hot pocket.
Some kind of
and it comes
waves.
back.
Right.
I'm pretty sure Admiral Byrd talked about it, and so did the Tibetans, right? Hollow Earth.
Oh,
Hey, don't get me.
Maybe they found the Hollow Earth.
maybe.
Don't get me excited about Godzilla. I will go to
Yeah.
the Hollow Earth to find
There's
Godzilla. and King Kong.
dinosaurs and yeah.
In Marvel
actually-
Comics, it's like the Savage Planet, I think, or something like that. Whatever is down there. That's where Craven comes from.
Mhm.
He was out there hunting stuff. And,
Yeah.
Sorry, not to derail you completely. Sorry.
No, not at all. Wait, who's Craven? Is this the Crow?
Craven the Hunter. He's one of Spider-Man's villains, where it's like a very gaudy lion's head around him, around his like chest thing. But yeah, it comes from like the Savage World or whatever the hell it's called, but it's at the center of the Earth. And basically all the dinosaurs and stuff like that live there. Forget how he gets casted out there, if he was born there or not. But he learns to hunt there. So he becomes the world's greatest hunter. Kingpin hires him to hunt down Spider-Man. And I think Daredevil too, some comics, but don't quote me on that.
Don't quote me on that. I love it. You're really serious about the
I ain't said shit,
Um,
all right?
the accuracy of the comic book references, and I
Hey.
appreciate that because I would be
Um,
the same way. I'm such a tourist on that front.
Have you ever wandered into a comic store and got something wrong? It's not a fun time.
I haven't dared step foot in one. I know. I think I've been in one, at least one or two, and both times I felt really inadequate. But
Comic Bros, can we calm down on the gatekeeping? Can we like educate instead of being
right, there
assholes
needs
about
to be some education and outreach on that front.
Yes, thank you.
Oh my
please.
gosh. Yeah, well, and it's interesting about the core. It's let's see, it's not just a solid ball of nickel and iron, but it contains two layers of its own, a distinct central region nestled within an outer shell. Which is just kind of weird. Nick, you'd mentioned the hollow Earth, but I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
it is interesting again to sort of see these ancient descriptions of what is being kind of caught up to by improving technology.
Yeah. Admiral Byrd talked about it when he went to his expeditions to the North and the South Pole. He said that there were entryways into the Hollow Earth, and
Ooh.
he was so credible about it that the Nazis went to Antarctica to
Uh-oh.
look for the entrance to the Hollow Earth. So whether
Oh
it
my
exists
gosh.
or not, the Nazis believed it did.
Dude, did those people ever come back or did they get sucked into the Hollow Earth?
Well, they established New Schwabenland in Antarctica, I think, yeah, back in the Second World War. And now every country has a piece of Antarctica. But yeah, you're not allowed to
Maybe-
go to the center of it, that's for sure.
Maybe that's where we should stage all our wars. It's just Antarctica. It's like, you push
Those
everyone
poor
there.
penguins.
You can't get a break, man.
Hey, penguins. It's a rough life, but it's a noble one. It'll be okay.
Just put
You
little
know-
flak
They'll be
jackets
permitted.
on them.
Yeah, they'll be permitted into the kingdom of God. They'll be fine.
Just
You
put
know-
little helmets on them. They'll be
Wait until they become militant and start stealing guns.
fine.
Well, and it's funny, this is such a divergence, but there's this Australian animal. Nick, you might know. It's not
Mhm.
so much a wombat, it's like a little brown, tiny bear looking thing with like a little black nose. I can't
That
remember what
sounds
it's
like a
called.
wombat.
It looks a lot like it, but it's just a
Oh,
little bit different.
those are like the quokkas or whatever.
Yes, something
Um,
like that. And I guess there was this like neighborhood, very affluent community, and they gated it, which was like nobody gated their neighborhoods in that area. So it was like a little bit of a bougie thing to do.
mhm.
But haha, kookaburras. I think that's what it's called.
Kookaburras are birds. You're thinking of
Oh no,
the quokka.
quokka. Okay.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it turned out that that was like their like they just were doing really well there because of the gating and because they're a protected species, they can't get removed, but their
Mhm.
population is getting out of control and it's causing such a disturbance to this, this gated
They're really
community.
cute though.
It's a yeah, the story I saw in it was adorable. But anyway, all right. So we talked a little bit about this, the remote sensing, and we had that intro quote. Now, I like that intro quote because it sort of reminds me of the myth of Sisyphus. Do you get the connection there too? Because he's kind of talking about, we have all these assumptions about our universe based on observed data, but we know that that data is going to go away one day. So how can we trust that the data we were basing everything on is true and accurate or not part of a bigger thing? And to me, that seems like a Sisyphusian type of endeavor, right? Like you're
Boy, oh
just sort
boy,
of,
he should really apply that attitude across the board when he in his life, because I can not going to, but Mr. Tyson has some opinions on things that would fly in the face of that statement. So, but
interesting.
I get that.
Shocking. Pop
Shocking.
culture scientist has
Yeah,
has
has
unsound
bad
logic.
takes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus.
No, I think there's something, I don't know if it's Sisyphean, but it also reminds me a little bit of the concept of Atlantis as well, right? So Neil deGrasse Tyson confirms Atlantis in that quote, because we have, at least geologically speaking. But yeah, in the context of Sisyphus, I can see where, yes, it's a ever stretching hallway. It's always that sort of push past the barrier of knowledge, which then just creates another barrier.
Yeah. To get back to like the Sisyphusian tale of pushing a rock up a hill and it rolls down again. But this is like you push it down. It's like a local maxima, would be called in AI terms, where you push your boulder down because it was like the peak of human knowledge and it rose back down. But now you know a little bit more. So maybe it's not like exactly one and the same. Like you're here, but you can't perceive that you're up here versus you're down here.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
then you push it up again, and then it rolls back down. And as tools, kind of assuming tools go on like a linear scale, you're building your way up towards this global maxima. And then when that goes down, then that's where the real fun begins.
Right, right. Or it's like you picture a large mountain with these little, like, I don't know, like staircase sort of dips. And so it's like you're pushing the boulder, you get a third way and you can't see the peak. You think you're close, but you're not. And then even when you do get close and you're like, oh, I can see sky. Yeah, it's just like, oh, dang it.
It's
Now
a
I got to.
plateau.
Yeah. And it's cool because we can get into this later, but Albert Camus, he has his essay about the myth of Sisyphus. And what I liked about his take on it is that he talks about the walk downhill. That and we'll get into this too. So the whole myth of Sisyphus is him being kind of a jerk to escape his fate. But Camus talks about his walk down the hill. He has to accept his fate. And I thought that
Well,
was kind
not
of a cool
only
take.
does he not accept it, he finds himself happy. At the beginning question of that essay is the only real question in philosophy is if one should wake up in the morning and kill themselves. The essay on suicide, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the end of it, the thing that you get over suicide is that you enjoy watching the boulder roll down the hill. You enjoy, you get pleasure and happiness. So he says one must imagine Sisyphus as a happy man.
Mm. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And his essay about it is very like, I don't know. It just makes the human spirit, like, because Well, okay. Well, I guess we could get into that later. Let me start with the actual myth. If I may, or do you want to put a pin in it, or we could just reverse it and start talking about what he said briefly and then go into the myth.
It's your show, my friend. Whatever you wish.
I need like a little coin, like Two-Face.
We'll get into it later so that we don't, what is it called? Burying the lead?
Oh,
we
yeah.
don't get we don't throw away all of the juice until later so that, people can hang on and listen for longer.
Right. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. You don't get to leave that quickly. It's only 20 minutes in. All right, buckle up. But also this is a good time to hit the pause and go get some tea or a snack. We'll be here. But if you're joining us live, the myth of Sisyphus, which is actually, there's a lot I didn't remember. I just remembered the boulder. Didn't really realize what he did. So first off, he was a king known for outrageous cruelty. He was a clever ruler and he made his city very prosperous, but he was also kind of a tyrant and he killed his niece and visitors just to show off his power. And this violation of, quote, sacred hospitality, a tradition, sort of angered the gods. And his reckless confidence just made everything worse when the gods tried to punish him. So the story goes, he's doing all this bad stuff and the gods don't like him, but they didn't really want to do anything until Zeus comes into play, as he does. He takes the shape of an eagle and he carries away this nymph. Her name was Aegina. And Aegina's father was the river god. And obviously he doesn't want to lose his daughter. So he pursues the trail to try to get his daughter back. And that's when he comes across the path of Sisyphus. Sisyphus says, I'll show you where, what direction the eagle went. But in exchange, I'd want this beautiful river to come through my city and just be really gorgeous. So river god grants that. And, Sisyphus tells him the direction that Zeus went, which made him furious. And that's when he ordered Thanatos, or Death, to chain Sisyphus up in the underworld so he couldn't cause any more drama or problems for Zeus. But Sisyphus lived up to his crafty ways. And, he was about to be in prison and they're going to put chains on him. And he just sort of plays dumb. And he's like, oh, how do those chains work? And Thanatos is like, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And whoop, he chains up Thanatos and then he runs away and he somehow makes it back to the world of the living. Now, this is kind of a problem. And again, this is something I never knew. With Thanatos trapped, nobody could die. And so the world was just thrown into chaos. And apparently things only got fixed when the god of war found war not to be fun because nobody was dying. And so he's marches down and he's like, Thanatos, what's going on? He releases him from his chains. So that's all happening in the underworld. Meanwhile, Sisyphus is, probably observing the fact that no one's dying and all this stuff is happening and he knows his reckoning's coming. So he decides he's going to get ahead of it. Okay, they're not going to kill me. I'm going to have my wife throw me in the river Styx because I have another trick up my sleeve. His body floats and he meets Persephone, queen of the underworld. And he tells her that his wife disrespected him because she didn't give him a proper burial. And Persephone takes pity on him and grants him permission to go back to the land of the living so he can punish his wife, but only on the condition that he returns when he's done. And of course, he didn't go back. So now, having twice escaped death, Zeus is really pissed. There's not going to be a third time. And he has Sisyphus dragged back to Hades as a punishment. Sisyphus was given a really simple task, and that was to push a boulder up a hill. Right before it gets to the top of the hill, it'll roll right back down, forcing him to start over and over for all of eternity. So I kind of rushed through that, but is there what piece of that story sort of made you smile? Because there were so many moments where I was just like, "Oh my god, how come I didn't read this sooner?" It was just funny on a lot of different levels to me.
All of it makes me smile. I love that story. Just also too, like as a Deadpool fan, there's the classic tale of how Deadpool gets his immortality, where basically death is in love with him and keeps standing up death, and so death decides never to take him. That's his punishment, that he's never allowed to die.
He's just like, I'm done with you.
Yeah, like we're not going on another date. This is over. You know, like it's just over. Like you keep standing me up. And there's something with that with Sisyphus, but this is Sisyphus's cleverness to get out of these traps of death is really great. And my brain is pointing me towards a George Carlin stand-up bit, but the details are lost. So there's something within that too. I'm sure probably come back to me at a random moment. But no, yeah, like that whole thing of being able to be clever and escape death and kind of lead death on, but never. Like I always see death as like a barfly that you can flirt with, you can hang out with, you can talk with, but you never want to take death home. And this Sisyphean myth is the ultimate thing about that sort of tale.
Yeah, I agree. And I also like, the idea that him escaping his fate is angering the gods. Like they're just like, dude, we wanted you to go this way. Stay there. And then he gets out of it again. So yeah, like you're saying, the cleverness and the escaping of a pre-described fate is sort of like, don't do that, is kind of the idea there.
And there's a Jungian underpinning here with
I
the
bet.
tale of the hero, where the hero is, in this case, Sisyphus. Heroes are perfect in the eyes of the gods, and by perfect I mean they no longer need the gods, which makes the gods angry. So heroes become a symbol to be emulated, or yeah, to be emulated, to be chased after, so that you can become like them, or imitated is the proper word, not emulated. I apologize. Imitated. But heroes always die. They always have like their comeuppance, and that's the fate of the hero. So even if Sisyphus escaped his sort of fate, he still has to deal with doing that mundane task. And then the whole notion of absurdism is being okay with that. Getting to the Camus mythicism, being okay with that strange task, or being okay with your fate. And then in that sense, when you're okay with it, you end up escaping that fate as well. So it gets back to the myth of the hero, which is kind of interesting from a Jungian lens.
Yeah, well, and even to dovetail that into sort of psychology, so much of I guess the word acceptance, because right, like you could be on a derailment of your goals, maybe your fate takes you out of something, and to sort of accept it and sort of, integrate it or transmute it, there's some alchemy there too, which it's just, like I know Nick has talked about loving myths because they're so rich. And I'm just appreciating this one tonight.
No fate, but the fate we make.
No fate.
Said some wise person in some movie at some time.
Nice. What about you, Nick? What do you think? Anything stands out in this myth to you?
Yeah, I mean, lots of things. I would think the stuff that you guys have already touched on, very Bugs Bunny-esque. I like to think about the punishments usually when it comes to Greek mythology, because they tend to sort of befit the crime, and it seems to me that Sisyphus's crime is quite literally outsmarting the gods, but that could be translated into something like hubris, or sort of like a
cheating death. I like the word cheating in a sense, because you have usually humans have a very intimate relationship with death, so you're cheating on that relationship with death to outsmart death.
Yeah, but he also outsmarted a few other gods too. So I'm just trying to consider this idea of just hubris and sort of vaulting yourself to that omniscient point, or that point where the gods might dwell. which then makes the rolling up the ball or rolling the boulder up the hill a little bit more pertinent, or not pertinent, but poignant, because it's, sort of the myth of Icarus. It's the Tower of Babel. It's all of these things that we sort of, and it's the thing that you're talking about in this episode, right? It's this, once we hit that threshold, we're sort of thrust back down the hill. And you have to continue doing that process, like that's what life is.
Here's the absolutely beautiful thing, I think, with this is that the gods could have given Sisyphus any amount of punishment, like you see within Abrahamic religion, sort of fire and absolute torture and things like that. But within this Greek sort of tradition, the gods are enamored with humans, with heroes that are willing to try to vault themselves up. So they're like, all right, like we're gonna punish you, but you did pretty good, kid. So push this boulder up a hill and watch it roll down. Right? Like they could have had Cerberus, or they could have the Promethean fate.
Yeah, there could have been like mean, painful things.
Yeah, but I think that's, like that could be considered a lesser punishment. But then you have things like Atlas, who had to bear the weight of his shoulder, of the world on his shoulders. So there's like, the punishment is always symbolic of the thing that the infraction, or what caused the punishment. So
sure, but this is always in the case of gods, right? Like gods tend to get worse punishments than humans. Sisyphus was a king and a human, but vaulted himself up to the level of God. So that's what I find interesting, is that there is still this adoration towards humans that are willing to attempt to raise themselves up towards the level of a god, and so their punishments are less. And you actually see this within the Book of Enoch, where whatever his name is gets a tour of hell for angels, and the hell for angels is much worse than the hell for humans, alongside the notion that hell being Tartarus within the Greek mythology, being that angels can withstand more. So these gods, Atlas and the Promethean punishment, they're all god level punishments, but the punishments for humans are less, because in theory humans cannot withstand as much as a god. But I like to think that there's that adoration towards humans trying to push themselves above the level of humanity to get to that godhood that the gods kind of smile upon, even if they don't like what they did.
I mean, yeah, that's your interpretation of it, but I don't know if that's what the myth said.
Okay, thanks, fair.
And I think, as far as myths go, there's the myth is the myth, and then there's the myth as an allegory. And I think, that's where things can start to get really interesting, because you can interpret it in a lot of different ways. And I sort of like this middle idea of like, by not dying, he's like, I mean, that's the whole thing about being a human, about being mortal, is you're not immortal. And so he keeps denying that. And, and I think it's interesting that so many people were affected by this one king's refusal to sort of fall in line.
It reminds me a lot of, I apologize for
no, you're good.
Rambling or just being drunk. It reminds me of that speaking of Bugs Bunny, like Nick was talking earlier, there's an old Bugs Bunny cartoon where he's the matador, and the Looney Tunes bull is the bull, and he keeps just beating him every time. That almost what it feels like, where Sisyphus is that sort of matador. He's waving that red kind of flag, or red kind of blanket, or whatever the hell, red cloth. And the gods rush towards it, and then he just pulls it away. It's like a Brazilian jiu-jitsu move as far as mythology goes.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And, it's interesting, he's got this whole reputation of being really clever, and also disrespecting the law of, like, what did they call it? Sacred hospitality tradition, and that makes sense too, like, if one person is sort of a dick and not following the rules, it does affect everybody to some extent. So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of layers to this one. Yeah.
Sacred hospitality was important because we wouldn't be able to have a society without it. You know, like you're
little
not
bit,
supposed
yeah.
to spill blood. You know, you're not supposed to spill the blood of your guests. In your home.
Ideally,
Like,
you know, you would feed
that's a
them.
big no-no. Ideally, yeah.
But how far have we
Or maybe eat them.
wandered from that with respect to like real society and say homeless folk, right? It's useless. The gods have oftentimes made themselves look homeless. Even Jesus, you can argue, was not properly dressed. But yeah, that sacred hospitality thing is important. But in today's society, I don't think that matters too much. Seeing people walk by homeless folk like they don't exist. That's usually the norm.
Yeah.
So
Unfortunately.
it's an intriguing thing to think about. Not so much like it might be the norm just to eat those things, as you said. I don't know what those things are, but that's what my parents did.
I feel like sometimes maybe part of it too is that we've shortened the parameters of what we consider our domain. So we don't really have a whole lot of care for things outside of the four corners of our house. And then maybe a little bit of care for the people around our four corners of a house. But the farther we get out from that, we've definitely curtailed. Whereas, you know, like in ancient traditions and mythologies, it's like if you came to a town and you were anybody of note, the king's guard would receive you. The whole town would receive you. You'd be brought to the palace. You know, you would feast with the king. They would give you, you know, room and board and all of that stuff. But yeah, nowadays we don't really have that. Everybody's domain is just the house they live in.
Yeah. Could you imagine if we did though? Like if a politician or a celebrity shows up,
I mean,
it's
kind
like
of do.
every time I have to stop what I'm doing and go to
I
the
know,
streets
right?
and welcome this person. Gosh.
Hey, but politicians, I think that's still a thing. I mean,
That used
Yeah,
to
they
be a
always have a
thing.
motorcade in LA.
And
Yeah.
I think back in like the
They can be pull
90s.
over. How dare you? I'm a very important man. I'm going places.
The little flags. I always like the little flags on the limos, you know? Well, we're going to circle back to the myth of Sisyphus, but I wanted to just go back to the remote sensing for a minute as well, because I don't know exactly how these ideas tie together, but I know that they do. And maybe I don't have to force them, but I just wanted to share. So with the remote sensing, there's this wing called space archaeology. And there's this woman, they're calling her the modern day Indiana Jones because she's making these phenomenal discoveries using different types of satellite, you know, technology and stuff like that. But she was saying that there is a big looting problem that's going on with, so it's like Egypt in particular. They've been doing satellite mapping for maybe 10, 14 years, something like that. And so she actually has proof of the looting that's been happening in those areas. Over an 8-year period, they counted over 200,000 looting pits in Egypt. And it's really gross if you have trypophobia. I don't recommend watching her lectures with the images on, because she'll show you these like pictures of these different deserts. And you can see some little boxes remain. Those were formerly tombs. But then you see all these like, you know, holes all over the place. And they're because people went in, dug up a tomb, dug up urns and art and all that stuff. And what she said was really interesting because she ended up mapping the increase of these looting pits. And she noticed that the like acceleration of the looting happened right after the 2009 recession. And so she talked about sort of economics being this driver of looting of ancient, artifacts. And puzzle pieces to our history. And furthermore, she said it was really interesting because in the work that she does, some of these new findings are rewriting what we know to be true about our past. Some of these new discoveries are also giving us insights that we're not as special as we thought we were, in the sense that, like, she said some of the Mesopotamia artifacts she found, she'll find encoded mother-in-law jokes, or she'll find like something that talks about a neighbor feud, like two neighbors cursing each other out. She even found an inscription about schoolboys who were cutting class to go drinking. This is like so long ago. She talked about sculptures as being selfies, like the original selfie. She talked about jewelry and how humans have always had bling. And my favorite, she was like, we've even been cat lovers for thousands of years because of all the images of cats. And so it made me think a little bit about this Sisyphus concept, because we're just now unlocking the ability to find more and more that's under the earth. But with that's coming more challenges. Same with the Thomas Webb telescope. We finally got that thing in the air. It was amazing. In 2 days, it gets hit by a rocket and there's some pieces that are damaged. And until we can get like a robot out there or something, we're not going to be able to fix it. And it seems really Sisyphusian to me. And Nick thinks space is fake. Yeah. But am I alone?
The Webb telescope just magically fell apart as soon as we launched it into space. Sorry, guys. Can't have your space pictures.
No toys.
Hey, it's a hell of a tax write-off, right? You can't say that.
Yeah, it is. It totally is. Dude. Oh my gosh. Well, we ate all the mummies, okay? So we have to remember that. If you remember,
we have to remember that. Nick, just let people know what that's about, because that happened, guys.
Yeah.
Happened.
I think we talked about it in our human sacrifice episode. What's up, Mike?
I was gonna say yes. Please point them to the episode.
I believe that was the human sacrifice, or maybe it was the cannibalism episode.
We had a mummies episode.
I don't know if we talked about it in the mummy, but we might have. Watch all three and find out which one it is.
Report back in, and you'll get an expo coin.
Nick will look through all of the episodes.
Yes, there you go.
Links in
Put the notes in the description.
We really should do that.
No, but we definitely ate like most of the mummies that we found as medicine, and
wait,
the
we
Victorian
didn't.
age.
Humans did.
I'm
just
saying
to be clear,
it's just a collective. Yes,
Hey,
I don't want that on my cred.
Hey, I hate to tell you this. If that knowledge is within your genetic information, guess what? You did too.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. You benefited from the mummy eating.
Oh my gosh. These are the days I wish I was fully native.
Yeah.
No,
but I mean, you also have to think about the destruction of things out of spite as well. I know that you said, economics could be a part of it, or this lady says, but like there's the destruction of all of the megalithic structures in Mesopotamia, in particular in Iraq and Syria.
Oh,
there's these gigantic Babylonian sphinx with inscriptions and stories and shit, and like these things have been destroyed. People have taken dynamite and blown them up. So you have this concept. Yeah.
Oh no, I was just going to agree with you that she was mentioning there's a term for it. It's sort of like, they're deliberately stealing your cultural heritage or history. Or
if you have to rewrite your own empire, say you're an invading force and you're trying to conquer a people, they can't have any tie to their previous civilizations, because that would be, that would be sentimental to them. So you have to destroy that stuff. So you think about that has probably been happening for thousands and thousands of years. You can only imagine what we've lost to time.
It's a very like fundamentalist thought. There have been plenty of times where countries have invaded other countries or bombed other countries, where we've tried to avoid those sort of cultural centers to preserve history. But you're right in the sense that didn't happen until much later in history. And then to address the things that were not so different from people thousands of years ago, I mean, it's just biology. We haven't evolved that much from days of old, like physically or biologically speaking. So it kind of makes sense that we have the same sort of drives that people did in the past. The technology of the day is just the tools that we had express, be able to express that sort of drive, that biological drive of notoriety, or if you want to like reduce everything down to mating, then the ability to find a mate, whether it be by means of fame, fortune, or I don't know, cloak and dagger, whatever other words you want to use. It makes sense that we haven't changed that much from so many centuries ago.
Well, yeah, and and she said that the looting's kind of increasing on a global scale. And in addition to economics, she talked about sort of the art world placing a value on these things, and different ways that other folks sort of um, helped this kind of thing happen. But she also called it ancient identity theft, was the term she used. I finally found it. And I thought this was really interesting because, you know, that's what?
And continue, you're fine. As you're good. Keep going. You're good. You're good. My brain,
Okay.
intrusive thoughts. You're good.
Okay. Well, she was just saying that she really wanted to start discovering the millions of unknown archaeological sites around the world before it's too late, quote unquote. And, she really wants to protect the world's hidden heritage, which contains clues to humankind's collective resilience and creativity. And, in both the Neil deGrasse Tyson quote and what she's sort of talking about, there seems to be this urgency that we're noticing on different spectrums of the scientific community, right? It's urgent that we study the universe before we can no longer observe it. It's urgent that we discover ancient artifacts before we no longer have it. And then to think about that urgency, that pursuit of sort of knowledge, and the Sisyphus myth, like, if we were to follow the Camus interpretation of it, we would just enjoy sort of the unrushed acquisition and discovery and the excitement of it all. But by adding this time element, it's sort of making it punishment, not this sort of, seed to thrive kind of thing. Does that make any sense?
Sure
Yeah.
it does. Until the moment where we find out that the archaeological discovery is the destruction of an older archaeological discovery. Or you can get very meta with this, which
I
gets
bet.
back to the Sisyphusian route, right? Where you enjoy the moment, where you find the moment, you can observe the moment because now you could observe the moment once more. Yeah, it becomes very like time is a flat circle sort of thing, but you got to stretch it on another dimension. Yeah, it all makes sense.
Yeah, it seems only like if it's only really a punishment if you think that you're going to live to the end of history, right? Or at least to the end of the pursuit.
Or until
And I
the end
don't.
of your academic grant.
Or till the
True.
end of that.
Maybe even just
Yeah.
the end of a project. But yeah, I would think that people who are studying or pursuing knowledge understand that it's just a constant pursuit. There is no end to knowledge, right? At least we don't know one yet. Maybe there is, but we haven't gotten there.
Oh, heaven forbid the day we reach there.
Well,
I
even if we
don't want to know that day.
well, yeah, even if we did get there, it'd be like freaking Forrest Gump when he's running for like a year and then he just stops and he's like, I guess I'll go home now.
Mhm.
What do we do then? Like, is that why we exist? To sort of just pursue? It's interesting. Because the
curse of
antithesis. What were you gonna say?
Curse of consciousness.
Mm.
Most animals live until they die, but they don't have to worry about this consciousness thing. They don't have to think about stuff. But we as humans, by one means or another, have discovered this thing. So we think about stuff and find knowledge. The endless pursuit is the game that kicks us out of our misery of realizing that we're going to die. Should that endless pursuit ever end, I don't want to know what happens to our species.
Yeah, neither do I. I don't know what would happen. And I kind of am getting forbidden fruit vibes, because this is like similar to what we were talking about last week, is this idea of like, you know, once you're knowledgeable of mortality, it sort of opens this
Do you think
situationship.
do you think the attitude towards the end of knowledge could hit some sort of critical mass, and like maybe perhaps a false end of knowledge, like some sort of contagion?
Like all the
That
scientists say, that's it, we're giving up. There's just no answer. And
Well, maybe not
everybody's
even
just
in the
lax.
scientists. No, but I mean, like, it doesn't have to be scientists. If we're talking about, everybody on Earth, is there like a critical mass point in which too many people on Earth believe that we're at this end of knowledge, that it really doesn't even matter if we learn anything new?
Oh, do you want to know?
It's dark thoughts.
You want to know? Yeah, I can give you an honest opinion. And I'm not really.
Give me your
happy.
dishonest opinion first, and then your honest opinion. We can compare and contrast.
Thanks,
I'll take notes.
Dishonestly, dishonestly, I think
You broke his brain. Oh no.
No, because no, you're fine. I just think about this because I've only thought about it in the honest light. So that's the loop. That's the loop we want people to be in. We keep them there, and then there's a select group that go beyond that loop that actually see the thing. So dishonestly speaking, then we want to pursue that critical mass in order to find a new critical mass, because the endeavors of scientific knowledge will never end.
Yes.
Mhm.
You must have the revolution be self-perpetuating.
Yeah, it's a self-perpetuating motion machine. Yeah. We all know those exist at all times. And should those ever end, we will find ways to create new energy. We will propel that self-propulsion energy into the Star Trek of the multi-meta, whatever the fuck that is. The honest opinion is that this is why drama exists, and this is why loops exist. Any sort of social construct in this drama, sort of interpersonal relationships, exist so that we can focus all of our intellectual knowledge gathering and finding out shit. For that, should too many people escape that realm of drama and interpersonal relationships and focus on real things, then yes, we will find an end. And it won't be a limit to actual knowledge. It'll be a limit to our ability to find said knowledge. This is like if our brain was so simple to figure out our brain, we'd be so simple that we couldn't figure it out. That sort of notion. Then we would just die instantly. So it's very important that the people that, it's like also shamanic in a sense, the people that can carry that weight of that knowledge should go pursue that. And then there should be this loop that always happens for others that cannot, where it's like drama, political factors of the day, reorganizing of whatever is tantalizing for the tablet. This is what should happen for the majority of humans so that they don't spiral out into the abyss.
Right. The hoi polloi. The hoi polloi must sacrifice their lives, their blood, their sweat and tears so that the golden class can think about their lofty ideas.
The fool's golden class should think about their lofty ideas.
The fool's golden class.
Sisyphus was
the
a king.
fool's golden class keeps pushing forward. But all of them are all of humanity is fools. We're not getting out of here. No one's getting out of here alive. But that cow consciousness is that like golden prison or the golden cage, whatever the fuck you want to describe it. But there is somewhere where this is very comfortable. This loop that continues on and on in the maze. And there are those that escape that loop to find a different loop and the people that reach the end of the maze find suicide, or they find death, or find whatever that thing. They turning back to Sisyphus, turning back to the Camus thing. You have suicide or absurdism, where you reach the end of the maze, you look outside and you go back into the maze because you realize there's nothing outside of this maze that we call consciousness.
So perhaps the hoi polloi is the boulder, and the sort of ruling class is Sisyphus.
Gosh,
don't
if you
even
break
know.
it down like that, that's kind of an interesting way to sort of rethink it.
I'm just thinking about this concept of, like, yeah, I do agree with everything Mike is saying for sure.
And did it.
But yeah, I think that like being caught in this sort of loop is an interesting idea, because we obviously need a certain percentage of the population to be not in that loop in order for humanity to ever go anywhere. But it does strike me as significant that we do have a large group of people that are sort of just cogs in the machine, staring at the shadows on the cave, not really understanding the greater mechanism of their place in the machine.
That's completely fair. Very humanitarian effort, without a doubt. But I would like to also present you this within simplified terms, political systems. Take a direct democracy where everybody is free and can vote and go do like all that stuff versus an electoral college.
Mm-hmm.
Why did we decide on one versus the other? Well, was it because we found out that if we let everybody out of the cave, the light is so blinding. Getting back to Jungian shadow, going back to that sort of even Sisyphusian thing, right? That people can't appreciate the boulder rolling down the hill, whereas electoral college is sort of I'm sorry, that sort of others. What was the republic? Whatever the hell we have, that the direct democracy versus what we have.
Yeah, because we can't allow high dense populations to govern the rest of the country. Yeah.
Well, and I have a joke about this.
Things. And it's just like, as we were saying, where you have this high dense people stuck in that loop. And if they let themselves out, that's fantastic. We want to enlighten more minds. Sure. But it's such we don't know how to take somebody from this level of abstraction up to this level of abstraction yet.
Yeah, but I just think that the loop needs the pusher, and the pusher needs the loop, right? So like the people need to be in the loop so that the people outside of the loop can sort of govern society without having too many opinions about it. And then, the people inside the loop need to have the people outside of the loop so that society actually does something.
Yeah, but you need people to be cogs in the machine in order for
that's
that
what I
to
mean.
work.
They're in the loop.
Yeah, but you were stating earlier that it's trouble something that they don't know that they're cogs in the machine. If someone becomes aware that they're cogs in the machine, that builds the desire to get out of the machine, and that's a dangerous thing for said machine.
Unless the machine's more comfier.
Well, yeah, unless the machine's more comfy. I guess the ideal situation is to allow the person the choice to be in the machine or not. But that doesn't really even get to the most utilitarian goal for society is for it to run smoothly. And so therefore people need to be sort of cast into this loop against their will or otherwise.
Yeah, that's the idea that ignorance being darkness, being shadows, end up shaping the realm of your knowledge or the light. And people have to be ignorant of the machine. The idea is that people have to be ignorant of the machine or ignorant. They're in the machine in order for the machine to function properly.
Well, and I like that you brought up the example of the Electoral College, because I saw this really funny video. It was a dad, and he's like, I'm going to teach my kids about democracy. And then he's like, all right, guys, let's vote. What do we want for dinner? Pizza or, something healthy? And the two kids vote for pizza. And then the next scene, he's just laughing, and you see Electoral College like as a little banner, and he's like, we're going to have what I have. We're going to have what I want to have. And so, yeah, this like sort of illusion that you get a choice, but not really. And I wonder if that sort of is similar to this concept of fate,
Like with respect to that sort of stuff. I mean, me being in a city in a highly dense population, highly dense population center shouldn't have a higher say than somebody in a rural area or in a tiny town of like 5, or a township full of 25 people within the wider spec of things. And that's where it gets like we're starting to lose the actual argument that we should direct democracies tend not to work. They tend to fall apart very quickly due to this thing called tyranny of the masses. For example, if I could convince X amount of people that are the majority by hook or crook through logical fallacies, things that just don't actually like through rhetoric. Rhetoric is different than philosophy. Sophists versus philosophers, blah blah blah. But a person is smart, people are dumb.
Yeah, well, and on the smart people are dumb is vein. I was thinking about this in terms of like,
Oh, which kind of vein? VAIN or VEIN? No, I'm just kidding. You're good.
oh, no, that one went a little over my head. But I think what I was trying to think about was this idea of sort of like game-changing tools that are sort of creating ripples of consequences. So, for example, the satellite imagery. Yeah, there are archaeologists that have the technology. There are also people with bad intent using the technology to enrich themselves. And, we can put satellites out there and do all this good stuff, but eventually we're going to have too much space debris and we won't be able to leave our planet. Like, there's all these ways where the way we're going forward, it's like, I mean, how do
Creates
you
our own future obstacle.
Exactly. And also
Mhm.
too, like, the only people doing that are the ones that specialize, they have PhDs, or, they just got really lucky and then became an expert by trade or something, and time. Either way, they're still going to be slotted into established systems. And the minute those established systems can't really reconcile with new data, so I'm thinking about like Graham Hancock and some of the stuff he talks about, some people are getting on board. Some people find him ludicrous. Who knows? Because, like Neil deGrasse Tyson said, who knows? The things we could be observing could be but Barbie doll toys for, giants at some point. We don't know. So I don't know what I'm trying to say. I guess I just think that, like, it is something that I think modern humans are going to have to reconcile with, is this idea that like reality is sort of static and ephemeral at the same time, like it's ever changing. But because it's accelerated, I think it's changing more within one lifetime. And I don't know how equipped humans are at this point to sort of adapt. And we did the Chat GPT episodes, or we talked a little bit about it. And I'm starting to be of the mind that it's like a sophisticated calculator that we haven't really integrated yet. A lot of schools, they haven't integrated this yet. And it's just kind of like, yeah, like, can it fit in the current structures, or does it beg them to be rebuilt? I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
It's a shotgun against the wall with respect to that tool, because at the end of the day, you need those. It removes a lot of layers that could be examined that you, from a programmer's point of view, should be examined. But it's a shotgun against the wall within claims of the world of AI, in my opinion. But there's things that are humans. The only thing that humans are better at than creating solutions is creating problems. And every problem a human can create, another human can solve. So don't worry about if we can't adapt to the moment. It's just to the cadence of which we adapt to the moment. Yeah, you're right. We're probably reaching closer to a thrash metal song than say like a typical Slipknot song with regards to knowledge acquisition and knowledge application. That's all fine and good. But I wouldn't throw your feelings and worries into an end of like an apocalypse state, because at the end of the day, these are all problems that humans create. Human creates it, a human can solve it.
And just for the record, I did not mention an apocalypse. So I think your subconscious fears came out there, my friend. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
I'm just kidding.
I'm just what's called worst case analyzing the situation. That's
I like it.
Within the world of algorithms, when you pen an algorithm, not like code it, you have to think of the worst case time scenario. This is just an abstract and relaxed version of said approach to a problem. But yeah, I wouldn't be really worried. Even that goes down to like societal problems. Eventually, society will get itself on trial with it in its own loop, or maybe it stays in loop and that's the proper solution.
But I
But-
mean, like, sorry.
Go for it. No, go for it.
Oh, okay. So just going back to that quote that I started out with. So like imagine in the future we're still here at the point when the galaxies have accelerated beyond our horizon. And imagine that we still have the knowledge that we've acquired currently. So then that would mean that there's nothing you can observe, but we observed it in the past, so we know it was out there once. What does that do for future humans? You know, because I know like
You're
Nick
getting
talked.
to the question is can knowledge be lost forever?
They
Right?
sure can.
Yeah. And I mean, and then the thing is because it's so far away, is it even still knowledge? You know, like
That becomes myth or wisdom or something like that. But I wouldn't worry about that. That's
I'm not worried. I'm just thinking about it because I'm trying to wrap my mind around it. And like, I was hoping I had more time to dive into Heidegger, but it just made me more foggy on the whole subject because he gets lost in the words. Just about the word idea. That's just idea. And I was like, I think I bit
Yeah.
off more than I could chew on this episode.
No, but again, going back to that simple notion, any problem caused by a human, any idea caused by a human or made by a human, the solution can be made or the idea can be recovered by another human. It's just gonna either take time or luck that somebody else comes across the same ideas. Can knowledge be lost forever? Sure, but that might be a good thing. You know, there's been think about all the years wasted in alchemy that built towards chemistry. Right? Maybe you just need a fundamental idea of alchemy, and then you can extrapolate that to build towards chemistry. Maybe alchemy never need to have to exist to start to build the things in chemistry. It's the branches of human thought where who knows how much knowledge that we had that we lost forever that we
Mhm.
just don't need now.
Yeah, no, I
Well,
know.
we
I
don't
hear
know
your
what we
point.
don't need. To quote the great Donald Rumsfeld, there is known knowns and there's known unknowns, and then there are unknown unknowns.
Well, yeah, and you know, like I think Sisyphus is a perfect myth because you know, this idea of somebody being condemned to repeat a futile task over and over and over again, it can be an allegory of the human condition. And you know, going back to the Camus thing, you know, you can compare it to sort of humanity's futile search for meaning and truth in a meaningless and indifferent universe. There's a lot of clauses going on, and that's just a very short summary. But, you know, I do think that the message of that was hopefulness, you know, not despairing, but sort of this idea of like meeting your fate and accepting and maybe enjoying the view at the top, you know, and then coming back down. And he postulated something to the effect that like daily struggles of our lives seem equally repetitive and absurd, we still give them significance and value by embracing them as our own and like not running away. And you know, I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of a beautiful thing that we do have the technology to look at ancient humans and know that they had issues with their mother-in-laws, they had issues with their neighbors, they drew, they paint, they were very much like us. They existed. And I don't know. It gave me the warm and fuzzies. And I wanted to end on the warm and fuzzies because I just think that something here, remote sensing, the guy's name that I can't say. It's all there's just like a really interesting thing to think about. I couldn't even spell it. I had to use copy paste this entire show. But no, it's good stuff.
Yeah, shocking. To be human is to be human.
Right.
But there's a beautiful thing in that is that our egos, everything with the technology we built, all this stuff, fantastic. But really, what we're chasing towards is to be human, to enjoy that rock rolling down the hill. Everybody in like customer service or a blue collar working job understands. You know, like they may hate that their job, they may hate the day, what happens, but the intrinsic value of the work that they did, there's something very beautiful in that, and that harkens to what you're saying, where it's that enjoyment of watching the boulder down the hill, as Camus said, enjoying the absurd, standing on the street corner and watching all of these animals that were once wild and bashing each other in the heads with rocks stand still because some random guy built a light, or random woman, guy, woman, human, whatever, or even robot nowadays, built a light that was red that sits up there. Because that color is red and your eyes pick up that red, you stand still. You don't move at all.
And you
You
could
just-
defy that, but you got to live with the consequences. Either you're going to be fine or fucked up.
It's very easy to avoid the big metal things driving down the road. I can tell you that for jaywalking for 20 of years. And so you can do it. It's within your ability as a human being. You can calculate all of that. You'll be fine. But no, like it's that thing. There's a beauty in being absolutely human, and maybe that's what we're chasing towards. I heard somebody kind of talk about what's not the meaning of life, but why we're alive, like I suppose, or like what your life is supposed to be towards. As a man, he was a man himself, very conservative, wise man himself within his own sect of religion, and he talked about chasing money, chasing women, and chasing respect. And the thing is, like, as human beings, I think we should be chasing this sort of wisdom that we're talking about here today, this sort of thing that makes everybody human.
Mm-hmm.
And pushes past the biological, because we're not going to change biologically, but I think the software can change. The hardware is a lot harder, and we have to put efforts once we become aware that the software can be lost, to put checkpoints within civilizations so we pick up and keep going, so we don't keep repeating the same societal or civilizational loop. Right, like just like a loop I was saying before, with people that can repeat the drama, politics, blah blah blah. We have to find a way to keep a civilizational loop if we want to push
keep it
this
fresh.
forward. Yeah, and I'm drunk and babbling. I apologize.
Oh, I was just like doing the snap, so just like added on. Yeah, keep it fresh. That was like a little
I
side
thought that was like the Oscar
the
music.
little hook.
Yeah, that was I started to talk too long. Like, all right, asshole, shut the fuck up. Get off stage.
No. I like what you're saying. And, it does make me think, like this observation of people in the past, the school kids were still skipping school to go drink. Whoa, who would have thought? Which means that the future humans aren't all that different to us. And I think it's kind of interesting to think about how, like, individually we're all mortal, but as a species, we have a chance at immortality, and I think that's kind of intriguing too. And I don't know, just lots of food for thought. I really like this myth.
My favorites. That is for damn sure.
Yeah, Nicholas, did you want to add any final? I've that's pretty much my whole episode. It's kind of all over the place, but hopefully, interesting.
Oh, your episode's like me.
Let's see. So I think one of the things that stands out to me most is something that I think maybe we only briefly touched upon, but it's the physical strain of rolling a boulder up a hill. The relief would be in letting it fall down, because you no longer have to carry. You don't not have to roll it up the hill.
Good point.
So perhaps there is a relief, like we were kind of hinting at before, with this need for the society to continue to progress. Is there's a relief in knowing that you haven't hit that threshold of knowledge, and that every time you encounter a facade or a faux threshold, you break through and realize that there's still something deeper there. So that could be sort of tied towards the relief of being able to allow the boulder to roll back down the hill, because you're no longer expending the physical energy to roll it up.
Right. Time to go get your gains on. Go Chipotle, come back.
Pardon my interruption. Faux, F-A-U-X, or faux, F-A-O, F-O-E?
Faux, F-A-U-X.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then maybe in this effort for knowledge too, if we're destined to roll up a hill anyways, it might be that knowledge is finding the things to appreciate on the way up.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like awareness, and even from the little of Heidegger I was scratching at, the concept of idea, there were parts that he was talking about how it's our ideas that sort of spark everything, like if there was anything that was truly a priori, which is before evidence, it's the idea to seek that evidence. It's the idea to be curious about something, or the idea to pause halfway up the mountain to admire something. And that's kind of interesting too, because it's like, let's say I had a job and my job was to push something up a mountain. Okay, well, if I knew I was going to be done with that job, I might do it really quickly. But if I know I'm never going to finish that job, well, I might just go really slow and take my time, right at the clock, and then let it go down and saunter down real slow, right?
Ooh.
Like there's no benefit of going fast in that situation.
Oh, now you're getting into some interesting systems. Imagine there is a group of people that were pushing up boulders up the mountain.
Mhm.
Is it really useful for you to push the boulder up the mountain faster than everybody else? Is it better
Right.
that if you push it up slower than everybody else? Or should you keep the same cadence?
I would say cadence, because you get camaraderie that way. I just watched Shawshank Redemption, and towards the middle, once he gets beers for everybody and they're drinking beers on the rooftop, it's like they're all buddies, and there is a tone shift, and all the scenes where they were as a group, laughing about something or whatever, like they were in prison, but they were still enjoying connection and laughter. And just a lot of little moments in that movie that I was like, yeah, human spirit, get
Well,
him.
if you're really smart, you convince the boulder to roll itself up its hill, and then you and your buddies can go have a party in the forest.
Oi, 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 oi.
You use robotics.
What are you doing over there? Trying to fuck up our game? What are you talking?
Zeus would be so pissed. He'd be
That's
like,
the
"You're
quiet
clever
part
again."
we don't talk about. How dare you, sir?
Right.
There is no human.
How dare you tell the boulders?
Yes, the boulders always fall back on towards thee. How dare you try to defy physics? Nothing works that way. It's not possible. It doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Good day, sir. You
Good
get
day.
nothing.
You just
You
got to pull
lose.
yourself up by your boulder straps.
Oh, geez.
Oh, now I'm getting fired. I mean, boulders. Yeah, you push
Yeah.
them up hills. That's what you do.
There you go.
Now I'm just thinking of the AC/DC song that's been in my head all week. I've got big balls. It's just one though. I've got big balls. You've got a big ball.
Okay, big ball.
Oh, it's got big balls. Push up a hill. It's a good song. I don't know why. It's like my pump up song. Every morning I've been listening to that. I'm like, yeah.
Oh, so they went through a hernia. Pushing up one big boulder up a hill. I only got one ball left to push up the hill. It's a great thing of jokes.
Right. I hope they give Sisyphus health care, because, like, what if he's like, falling apart and he's still got to push that boulder up the hill? Like,
Boulder ain't moving nowhere. They can fuck off.
He's like, I have my hand on it. That's enough. Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, there it is. I'm working on it. It'll get there one day. Deadlines, bitch. This is infinity. What are you talking about? There's no deadlines out here.
Mm-hmm.
The ball doesn't even exist. It's just in my mind. Yeah. Well, thank you so much too. I think that's the show on remote sensing and Sisyphus and the ephemeral nature of knowledge. Ephemeral is also one of my favorite words right now. It means ever changing. And yeah, comment and let us know what you think if you're listening to this episode. And yeah, I think that's all I got for tonight.
Sweet. All right. Thank you, Ayla. Appreciate you. And thanks for bringing this conversation to our table. Sorry. Thanks to Mike, and thanks to you guys for listening. We appreciate all of you out there. If you want to check us out, we are on every Friday night at 8 p.m. Mike's episode will be next week. I think we're doing a part 3 of Psychotech.
Correct.
All right.
On the technology part of it, I guess. Technology part of Psychotech. How biological and human-made technology can interface together to create a better human. Because humans suck.
Yes.
Yeah,
All right. So stay tuned for
robots.
that next week on Friday at 8 p.m. You can also go check out Think Ring Talks on Facebook if you want to see what we do with our friends. We got podcasts every day of the week, so go check them out there. And yeah, thanks so much for tuning in with us, guys. Leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you feel so inclined. And until next time, Cognonauts, stay out there, and we will catch you on the next ExoFathom. Good night.
Peace.
Stay clever.